Hello, fellow cyborg, and welcome to another Poetry Tuesday. Today I'm going to be doing a review of poetry, as you could tell from the title, of The Know You Never Listened To by Maggie Royer. I read this over the Slowathon, and my buddy read it with Acacia Ives, and I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. So let me give you a little bit of a background as to what this is. So this is about the aftermath and everything, all of the aftermath of a sexual assault. So if you don't think that you're going to be able to finish listening to me talk about that, I'm not going to go into graphic detail, then click away. Just protect yourself and be safe and know your limits. So this is a poetry collection all about the author Maggie Royer's feelings and psychology in the aftermath of a sexual assault. This was beautifully written, and for someone who's particularly sensitive to depictions of sexual assault, this I could handle very well. This is more interested and involved in the psychology of the survivor rather than recounting the actual attack. There are a few lines in various poems that give you a few more details about the circumstances of the assault, but it's very much more about the psychology in the aftermath. This isn't sponsored, but I just wanted you to know that if you buy a copy through WordStance's website or their Etsy store, 100% of the proceeds for the paperback book goes to RAINN, which is the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, which is a support network for people who have suffered from abuse and rape. And that's pretty freaking awesome, right? That this book is, I think, out to help survivors through the poetry emotionally, and also the proceeds are helping a network that also helps survivors. So it's just freaking awesome all the way around. This is divided up into, I think it's 7 sections that are titled Aftermath, Guilt, Anger, Searching for Solace, Healing, Forgiveness, and Letters to Myself and Everyone Else. And within these sections, you do have the main overarching theme of those different emotional states. Within the poems themselves, there is some really, really beautiful language, some fairy tale and mythology elements, quite a bit actually. There is foul language in here, especially in like the anger and guilt sections. These poems cover so much about sexual violence and being a survivor and the sort of situation, the atmosphere in the culture that lets this happen, where this is a recurring huge issue and it still continues to happen even though people are appalled and no one thinks that the situation is fine. It still just keeps happening. There are so many important discussions in here about victim blaming, about the male culture and how that intersects with consent and what consent actually is, dealing with being assaulted by someone that you previously had a relationship with, how your family deals with it, how you have to come to terms with who you are now and how this event has intersected with your identity. It covers the whole gamut. It does it respectfully, it does it emotionally and from the heart, and it also does it beautifully. These are some really beautiful poems. In fact, I'm going to read you at least one, if not 2, just to give you a bit of an idea of this poetry style. Very much up my street. I very much love this style, and I'll have to check out more by Maggie Royer in the future. But anyway, let's get on to the poems. So this is the first poem in the collection, which is under the Aftermath section, and it is called Daughter. Duende, noun, a spirit, fairy, ghost-like creature. Aubade, noun, a song or love poem greeting the dawn. Afterwards. In my apartment living room, with a single candle on the pillow, still wearing the same clothes, I pick up the cordless phone and try to call my mother to tell her what happened. When she answers, all the most beautiful words I know come tumbling out instead. The 2 at the top of this poem, sestina, hymnal, equinox. She listens patiently. I'm one of her 2 daughters, born leap years after the first. She knows I take my sweet time. Wernicke's aphasia, damage to the brain that causes one to speak fluently but meaninglessly. My tongue turns itself inside out like sea foam. I talk about filling envelopes with grilled cheese, birds driving seashells, mountains opening portholes. I do not know how to turn this into a language she will understand. The word assault is a fish at the end of a very long line, hooking itself deep into an ocean, somewhere on the other side of the equator. And here's one in the anger section. It's the first poem in the anger section, and it talks a little bit more about the victim blaming and the culture that allows sexual assault to continue to happen. This is called Not All Men. My grandmother cracks eggs the same way the man who invaded her house locked the bedroom door and wouldn't let her leave until he was finished, fierce and loud, with purpose, as if whatever came spilling out of her body would be useful. With eggs, there is only yolk. With my grandmother, there was life, and I live in fear of dark alleyways and drinks filled with drugs that lead to blackout and some stranger's fingers in my mouth, because inside my 20 years of life, there was once a bed, and another person in it, and a moment that happened between the covers in which my body was changed irreparably. Less a moment, really, than a timeline I will never be rid of. So you say not all men are werewolves dressed like sheep who howl at the moon even when the moon covers its ears and asks them to stop, and they won't, because stop is not a word they bothered to add to their vocabulary. You say not all men, not all men, not all men. But here we are, my grandmother and I, countless other women who contain multitudes of bruises and memories like wounds filled with salt, with skins that are afraid to occupy themselves after already being occupied by so many trespassers. And all you can do is stand there and say not all men. But let this poem spit in your face that we know, we women are not stupid. We know not all men do what so many have already done to us. But this is the least helpful thing to say, because the wrong that some men do makes us scared of all the others. This is not balm for our stitches. This is tearing them open. Say too many men instead, and there is some kind of progress. So I hope you got a bit of an idea of the poems that you're going to find in here. I think those were two really good examples of the different kinds of poems she's written. There are some more beautiful than the first and some more angry than the second I read to you, but I find that they were all very important. And though the reading experience was not the most enjoyable, let's say, because how can you enjoy the subject matter? The poetry itself was really enjoyable. I very much doubt that any poetry collection I read to the end of this year will top this as my favorite poetry collection of 2016. And I really, really need to catch up on Maggie Royer's other work because she just seems like a poet who writes the sort of poetry I love to read. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I hope that you enjoyed the poems that I read to you as much as those sorts of poems can be enjoyed. I hope that you consider picking up this volume if you can stomach it. I think it's really important, and not only are the messages important, but it's a lovely read as well. Until next time, be safe, be good to yourself, and continue to be lovely.